Rolling right along here with our Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign here for the month of October on the Exam Room podcast, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Joined once again by the incredible Dr. Kristi Funk. She is a best-selling author of the book Breast, the Owner's Manual, and the most knowledgeable person I know on this topic. Dr. Funk, thank you so very much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I love the Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign. I'm wearing my shirt today. I'm representing.
Rock it, girl, rock it. So the last time you were on the show, you did the top 12 breast superfoods. Fantastic. It was a great, tasty list. But today we're going to switch gears a little bit. You've got another list, but this one is the top 18 anti-estrogenic foods. So 18 foods here that we're going to be talking about. But before we get into the food, I actually want to ask you about anti-estrogenic pills, which breast cancer patients have to take. So let's start just by talking about how those pills actually work.
Perfect. Yeah, that's an important thing to understand when you're trying to think about breast cancer and how to reduce risk or reduce recurrence risk if you're already a thriver. And this is especially important because 80% of all breast cancers are fed and fueled by estrogen. That means that this year alone, you've got about 268,000 invasive cancers, plus another 40 to 50,000 in situ cancers, for a grand total of around 310, 80% of them. We're landing on 248,000 breast cancer patients year after year after year having an estrogen-driven tumor. What can decrease estrogen and how do you do it? So typical of pharmaceutical companies and Western medicine, pills can do it. And indeed they do. So here are the three mechanisms by which our pills that we throw at, what we offer to every single breast cancer patient. This is how their mechanisms work. So you've got two main sources of estrogen in your body. You, my friend, have one. Women have two. So source number one is the ovary, right? It's spewing out estrogen all lifelong until national average 51 years and 10 months, menopause hits. Definition of menopause, no period for the last 12 months. Your ovary then is spewing out estrogen until it doesn't. This is important. This will help. A lot of women will be like, oh, now I know why this pill and not that pill. The other source of estrogen, everywhere you have a fat cell, there's an enzyme called aromatase that is taking precursor steroids coming from your adrenal gland and from your ovary. The ovary that shut off the estrogen still spews out a bit of testosterone, and your adrenal gland spews out testosterone, androstenedione, other steroids. Aromatase, little enzyme factory, takes in testosterone, spits out estrogen. Okay, so that's your other source of estrogen. Do overweight or obese women who have more fat, therefore more aromatase, have more estrogen? I don't know. Stay tuned for next week when we talk about how obesity relates to breast cancer. Okay, so next, the drugs. Here are the different drugs. You've got three ways to stop this receptor on a cell from getting hit with estrogen so that the cell cancer can multiply and divide. The first is to just block it. That's what tamoxifen does. It's an estrogen decoy. It looks like it. It's like a key fitting into a lock, but it sits there and now the real estrogen can't come. And without its cancer fuel, this cell peters out and dies. So way one is to block it. That is required when your ovary is sending out pure estrogen into your bloodstream, because you need something to outcompete it and hit the receptor first. What if you don't have ovaries, or what if you're in menopause? Where's your only source of estrogen coming from? The fat. So why don't you just go to the faucet and turn it off rather than trying to mop up all the water with your tamoxifen, like beating it, right? Just stop it. So that's the aromatase inhibitors. That's Femara, Romacin, Arimidex, those drugs. They go out to the fat and they shut off the aromatase enzyme, so you're not making any estrogen. Then there's Faslodex, which is a dual thing of blocking the receptor, but over time degrades the receptor. So now you're down regulating the number of estrogen receptors that are on cancers. And I will say, in general, except for stage 4 cancers, you remove the tumor from the breast. So what we're really aiming all these drugs at are at the theoretical possibility in stages 1, 2, and 3, 0, 1, 2, and 3, or the physical reality in stage 4 of tumor cells in lung, liver, brain, or bone. But that, especially when you're not stage 4, you're only taking these pills as a precaution, right? It's like an insurance policy that if there are some rogue cells, because we already took care of the breast cancer in the breast, if there's still cells out there, they too express the estrogen receptor just the way the mama cell did that was in your breast way back when. So that's what the pills are doing behind the scenes on a daily basis. And I will say that that is tried and true. You wake up or before you go to bed, you swallow that pill and it's doing its job, right? It's blocking the receptor, it's shutting off the enzyme very reliably. So I don't want, especially the more aggressive subtypes of breast cancer out there, and especially, so there are 3 types of estrogen driven breast cancers that are on these pills that are, you can subdivide who they are based on genetic analyses of the cancer itself. It gets into the biology of the cancer based on a number of genomic markers. You may, if you have breast cancer, start to understand what I'm referring to. These studies called MammaPrint or Oncotype, they give us the underlying driving biology of the tumor and how much of it is truly estrogen driven. And the really aggressive cancers out there, estrogen positive, they could be HER2 positive or negative, but they're fast. They generally need chemotherapy and they come back fast. In other words, it's the first 5 years after your surgical treatment that you really need to be on these anti-estrogen pills. There's a huge movement now of like, maybe you should be taking them for 10, because in the long run, another 3.3% of people won't become stage 4 if you take it for 10 years. Okay. Women hate these pills, right? Like hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, insomnia, mood swings, mental acuity drops. So they really don't want to be on it at all, let alone for 10 years. It turns out to be an ultra low risk group based on MammaPrint genetic subtyping of the tumor. The ultra lows, it turns out, have such indolent tumors that are lazy and slow moving and actually gone already, right? She already had surgery, that they can stop their anti-estrogens at 2 years or even less with zero impact on 20-year survival. So that's that person. Then you have, and this is the surprise to me, it's the low risk woman. Her estrogen driven tumor is not wildly aggressive, so it's not coming back fast, but it's also not ultra low, super lazy. It's just like the tortoise and the hare. This is the tortoise, like it's there, it's plodding along. This is the cancer story that you hear about recurring like 10, 20 years from now. You're like, what? I thought it was like gonzo, but now it's back in bone 20 years later. That's this person. So we now have a better idea of who can maybe skip out on the estrogen therapy, who can take it, who really gets a huge benefit from suffering through it for 10 years, 5 years, the high risk person, or someone who really needs to think about it for 10 years. But here's the beautiful thing. Food does the exact same 3 things. I'm going to give you today the top 18 foods and drink that literally either are estrogen decoy lookalikes that fill receptors, that are literally shutting down aromatase, the fat enzyme that's converting into more estrogen, and that are literally degrading and downregulating estrogen receptors on your cancer cells. I'm not saying to eat these foods to the exclusion of the pills. That's a conversation you can have with your doctor. You should have, but they're pretty darn effective. So shall we jump in?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sure that you have some slides to share. And by the way, if you're listening to the podcast, you will find a link in the episode notes so you can watch these slides, watch this presentation on YouTube as well. So you can really soak in that information. And I see there the top 12 breast superfoods. So are we going to start with the recap?
We're going to start with the recap and present day. It just happens to be that the top 12 breast superfoods, each and every one of them has some anti-estrogenic capabilities.
Giddy up.
Giddy up. 2 for 1, people. So in case you missed it or don't remember, here are the top 12 breast superfoods that are also anti-estrogenic, blocking the superfood that your cancer loves, which is estrogen. So we've got, by the way, these top 3, I promise without any lie or exaggeration, come hell or high water, I get these top 3 foods in my body every single day. And so do my sons. I make sure of it. That's how anti-cancer these foods are beyond breast cancer. Soy, cruciferous vegetables, leafy greens, and flax seeds. And then from there, we've got dietary fiber, berries, apples, tomatoes, mushrooms, especially the white button, garlic, onions, leeks, shallots, chives, and scallions. That's the whole allium family, turmeric and other spices, seaweed, and cacao. So now today we're getting our bonus 6 foods and super drinks that also have anti-estrogenic properties in 1, 2, or 3 of the pathways that we've just outlined. So here are 4 superfoods. Red grapes. This kind of goes along with the berry thing, but there's more resveratrol in the skin of red grapes than other skins. And they have been independently shown to be quite potent anti-estrogenic foods. So red grapes, not white grapes, especially the ones, and I picked it out here in my picture, with the seeds. Those are the ones with the high resveratrol content in the skin. Next up, whole grains. We're talking 100% whole wheat, rye, barley, oats, wild rice, quinoa. You get the list. Buckwheat, couscous. I could go on. By the way, just I digress, but I'm 52. And so I was a high school product of the 80s. And let me tell you, that was the like no bread, pasta, rice, or potatoes era. And it sticks with you when you learn something that young. So I was so liberated when we went whole food plant-based, because I had been avoiding all of the grains. Now I understand that it has to be a whole grain, but you still can easily find a whole wheat, 100% whole wheat spaghetti and all the rices and the pastas. I love that I get to eat. Not an excessive amount. If you remember my food plate from last time, it's like the 70-30, 70 fruits and vegetables and 30% whole grains and proteins. But man, I've been enjoying getting all the grains back in my life. All right. And another anti-estrogen food is citrus. So oranges, grapefruit, tangerines, lemon, lime. Every once in a while in my smoothie, I'll cut like a half a lemon and just put the whole thing in there, peel and all. So those are 3 more anti-estrogens. Now I've got a fun one, a little known one. This is bonus superfood number 4. It is anti-inflammatory, anti-estrogenic, obviously, because it's on this list. It's also anti-diabetic and has been shown in human studies to decrease insulin resistance, decrease lipid profiles, LDL, and triglycerides. It's anti-atherogenic, has been shown in human studies to decrease plaque buildup in the arteries, leading to your numero uno killer, heart disease. And in my favorite food study, researchers recorded the total antioxidant content of 3,139 foods, everything from cola to coconuts. And they looked at more than food, though. It was food, beverages, spices, herbs, and supplements, everything that's in the world, basically. And at the very tippity top of that antioxidant power list, excuse me, scoffing at the blueberry, 124 times below it, was this fruit. Does anybody know what it is?
Let me describe that for the people who are listening. What is on the screen right now either looks like a really large grape or a really small I don't know, pumpkin, but the core on it is like an emerald green compared to this lime green that's outside. This is kind of funky looking, and honestly, I am drawing a complete blank right now.
That's okay. This is the Indian gooseberry.
Okay.
And I'm still getting a blank face. I love it. Okay, so I'm teaching you something today. The Indian gooseberry is really hard to find and not available. Like my friend texted me the other day at Trader Joe's. She's like, look, I found your gooseberry. And I'm like, yeah, that's a gooseberry. That's not the Indian gooseberry. Do not be fooled. This is the magic, baby. And this is how you have to get it, because you're not going to find it in the local grocery store, even the fancy Erewhons and Whole Foods out there. you're going to get it in its powder form, and it's called amla. We happen to source an incredibly potent amla. We call it Amla Boss. And, but you can get others. This is obviously organic. And we have it at our Pink Lotus store called Elements. Plants on average carry 64 times the antioxidant power of meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. I need to let that sink in for a second, because when you get in debates or discussions with carnivores, they're like, well, meat has antioxidants. And really, like, it does, okay, but very few, 64 times. So let's do some math on what that means, practically speaking. So here, I'll give you a question, Chuck. Gram per gram, in order to ingest the antioxidant content in 1 cup of blueberries that has that weighs 100 grams, it has 57 calories, and it has 0.3 grams of fat, okay? That's a cup of blueberries. Sorry about this, people. In order to get that amount of antioxidant power from pizza slices, how many pizza slices do you think you have to eat?
Oh, all right. So let's see here. 1 cup of blueberries versus pizza slices. I'm going to go with 36 slices of pizza, which is what, maybe, depending on how it's cut, 4 or 5 pizzas, something like that. Whole pizzas.
That was really close. 27.5 slices. And guess what? Instead of eating 100 grams, you'll be eating 2,750 grams. Instead of eating 57 calories, you'll be eating 7,590 calories. And instead of ingesting 0.3 grams of fat, you'll be eating 323 grams of fat, largely saturated, I might add.
Ooh, that is a lot.
Plant power, baby.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So amla, tippity top of the antioxidant scale. And by the way, our Amla Boss is so potent that you literally need a 1/4 teaspoon to get all that power for like a daily dose. So it's incredible.
Do you just put that in like a tea, or sprinkle it on top of some food, or like how?
I put it in my smoothie.
Aha.
My smoothie. And I'm going to talk about my smoothie coming up. Okay. So Aloe tonic. This is another secret weapon. Aloe tonic, it's anti-inflammatory, anti-estrogenic, anti-diabetic, and boosts your cellular immunity. What is it exactly? So the aloe vera plant, you know about it, right? Because you probably put aloe vera gel on a sunburn because it's extremely soothing and anti-inflammatory. But have you ever thought about that? What if you ingested it? What if you drink it? Then that powerful anti-inflammatory effect happens inside of your cells, squelching all of that inflammation, which is the playground for cancer and other illness. There's a study in humans, in diabetics, who took 1 tablespoon twice a day, so 2 tablespoons a day of aloe for just 2 weeks. These are diabetics. And in all of them, their blood sugar and their triglyceride levels went down. I mean, it's just really powerful stuff. So Aloe tonic is ours in the Pink Lotus Element store. And what makes it especially unique is that it's extracted without using heat. So you preserve all 200 plus essential nutrients in the aloe vera plant, and you're able to consume and liquefy the entire leaf. So when you see like aloe vera gel or other aloe drinks, they're usually diluted with water. It's definitely not the whole leaf. They're extracted with heat or alcohol, and they're losing like the vast majority of the potency. So yeah, this is just a really, I wish Pink Lotus had the ability to do like really intensive randomized controlled trials, because the individualized studies on this aloe tonic from doctors, it's pretty incredible what this has been able to do in terms of what's inflammatory in a body, like people with debilitating arthritis and rheumatoid arthritis, with inflammatory bowel syndrome, irritable bowel syndrome, autoimmune disorders like Sjogren's and lupus, well, all of the things, Lyme disease. It has really squelched inflammation in people's bodies. After we have some reviews even where people are like, they were debilitated, with irritable bowel syndrome. And after just drinking 1 or 2 capfuls, an ounce a day, boom, it's all remarkably better. So there is, I think, more magical research to be done behind what's really happening with aloe, because it does seem to be a near panacea, but it has this mucopolysaccharides, in particular ace-mannan, has been shown in studies to downregulate and destroy estrogen receptors on breast cancer cells. So there you have it. Bonus super drink number 2. I'm like, what am I trying to say? So super drink number 1 was aloe tonic. Super drink number 2, is it water, tea, red wine, or gin and tonic?
I mean, just kind of on a hunch, because water is great. I mean, it's fantastic for a lot of things, but it's not going to have other nutrients in there that, say, tea might have in it. And so that would be my, my guess here. Red wine, possible because of resveratrol, but I'm going to eliminate gin and tonic off of that list. Sorry, Snoop Dogg. So tea is my guess. Tea is my guess.
And ding, ding, ding. You, my friend, are oh so correct. And I loved hearing your rationale. It was like we were on a game show. You know, those contestants must be coached. Like, don't just go straight to your answer. Give us some of your thought process. Well, I would have said water, and you're exactly right. Water, too many days on earth without it, and that's the end of you. So we definitely need water. And it would definitely be a common beverage enjoyed by people who are over 100 years old. The centenarians, I have no doubt, drink water, but they probably don't drink much more water than the rest of the human population. So what is unique to the centenarians in their consumption of beverages is that they almost universally consume tea. And of all the teas, the clear winner is green. And it's because of the high EGCG, epigallocatechin gallate, antioxidant content in green tea that literally fights cancer and often wins. You're going to derive a number of health benefits, though, from all kinds of tea: green, white, black, oolong, even herbal, which doesn't come from the powerful tea plant, Camellia sinensis. But as such, herbal does lack EGCG. So, so does black, and so does oolong. So brewing destroys the catechins like EGCG. So you really have to gulp down the green variety to beat cancer reliably. Let me show you what I mean. So FIP, actually, you'd have to harken back to last year's exam room podcast, because I didn't talk about it this year, FIP. But this is, what are we going to do with me and my...
Do you need to go get a sip of tea real quick?
I have water instead.
Okay,
the second drink.
There you go.
All right. So I just don't think water helps. I need to just get that out of my throat, whatever it is. Okay. So FIP is this nasty heterocyclic amine, HCA, that forms whenever you cook beef, chicken, pork, and fish. It's the most abundant heterocyclic amine or carcinogenic compound found in the human diet, literally. And it's associated with developing breast, colon, and prostate cancers. So at levels of FIP that you would achieve by eating normal amounts of FIP food, like chicken, normal breast cells go from being normal to precancerous to invasive cancer in a dose and exposure dependent manner, meaning the more FIP you drip on normal breast cells, the more then they proliferate and migrate and invade when they change. All right, so now this graph is showing exactly that. We've got cell migration, invasion, and, oh, it's up here. I see what I did. Let me move my screen for you peeps. This graph is proliferation, cells 1 becoming 2, dividing and growing, migration, moving themselves out of their present condition into the breast space, and invasion, getting into the blood vessels and the lymphatics and heading on out to the lung, liver, bone, and brain. As you drip FIP on normal breast cells in increasing concentrations, as you can see from every bar, it is a predictable step ladder of more FIP, more problems. Yes? Yes. Okay. So now, what happens to all of these biochemical and molecular changes if you drip 2 extracts of green tea on normal breast cells? So now we're dripping on cell proliferation in increasing concentrations. We're dripping green tea on normal breast cells. Nothing's happening. Yeah, okay. Well, that's good because I wouldn't like my green tea to transform breast cells into invasive cancers. I'm just proving that the baseline point that green tea in and of itself has no effect on the cell structure or migration. Now what happens if you drip FIP onto the cells, that progressively changes them into invasive cancers, and then add on top of it green tea extract. Presto changeo, the cells that were transformed into cancerous change by the FIP essentially revert to normal as if the FIP never hit the cells. So here we are, for example, with this is your baseline. Here's what happened when FIP was dripped, and boom, here's where they went back to when the green tea's dripped, back to baseline. Here's where we are when FIP hits, and boom, when the green tea hits, we're back to baseline. It's over and over. This is actually, now this has 6 different things beyond the 3 migration, proliferation, and invasion that I was saying. These are 3 more capacities of cancer. So that's just pretty miraculous to me, how readily and rapidly green tea reverses the damage of FIP, which was so powerful. Wow, I can hear all of you being like, wow, I want some green tea. You do, because it inhibits free radicals. It has these polyphenol antioxidants that are flying around your bloodstream, warding off both cancer and diabetes, and it prevents and actually can reverse atherosclerosis. So, okay, yeah, this is cool. So let's talk cancer again. So we know that tea can help with glucose regulation and fight off plaque, but it also can halt the replication of cancer stem cells. Stem cells, cancerous stem cells, we think are the masterminds in breast cancer, meaning they're the reason why cancer recurs and why stage 4 happens. Cancer stem cells are very slowly dividing. And as such, chemo sails straight past them. You may not know this, but chemo is like a smart bomb and it's just looking for one thing. Hey, what's moving fast around here? Oh, your hair, bald. Oh, your GI tract, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. Oh, your fingernails grow fast. Let make them brittle and wonky. But you, cancer stem cell, are like a turtle in a shell. Like you're not going anywhere fast. So chemo is not going to see it or kill the stem cell. I wonder if green tea can. All right. So when a free radical oxidizes your DNA, it can cause a mutation, right? And that initiates the cancerous change, which then propagates into a detectable mass. So within 40 minutes of drinking green tea, your plasma peaks with antioxidant powers, like particularly the EGCG. And that can combat the oxidative damage that is done to the DNA. So it decreases the risk of cancer. So the circles here, they're in the control group after drinking water. So nothing's happening. But when you drink green tea, you've got this peak of antioxidants that's exactly 40 minutes later. All right, so keep that in mind. This meta-analysis looked at all the studies published on green tea and cancer and cardiovascular disease over a 40-year period between 1980 and 2020. So here's what they found. The squares in the bars up here, those are the average results in the data of all the studies they looked at. And then the bars, the lines above and below the square, they're going to indicate the variation that's present in the data. So you can imagine the shorter the bar, the better the consensus among the studies at that plot point. A longer bar, the studies are kind of farther off from each other in terms of benefit or no benefit. Overall, green tea consumption benefits human health. So total cancer death wasn't affected, but the incidence of individual cancers was. So on the whole, each type of cancer that's listed down here, and I'll read them for people who can't see it. We're looking at bladder, breast, colorectal, esophageal, gastric, liver, lung, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, oral cancers, pancreatic, prostate, endometrial, that's uterine, ovarian, and then there's cardiovascular deaths and stroke. So we're looking at the effect of green tea on all of these disease processes. And although cancer mortality was not largely affected, individual cancer incidence, which of course has its own ramifications of treatment and repercussions and misery brought into a life. So just staving off the cancer in the first place, whether or not you die from it, is a massive win for green tea. So what you can see, and I've made green circles be a near 40% drop in incidence, specifically because of the green tea. And the red circles have about a 20% drop in incidence because of green tea. So you get a 20% drop from high versus low green tea consumption in breast, oral, and prostate cancers, and a nearly 40% drop in esophageal, liver, lung, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and ovarian cancers, as well as cardiovascular mortality and stroke. It's pretty phenomenal. So green tea in breast cancer. This is a cool study. It was in Japanese women, 1,160 breast cancer patients followed for 9 years. And those drinking 3 cups of green tea a day in stage 1 breast cancer had a 57% drop in recurrence. Stage 2 cancers, a 31% drop in recurrence. Finally, pro tip, a squeeze of lemon into your green tea boosts the antioxidant EGCG absorption by 5-fold. So absolutely always add a squeeze of lemon to your green tea. As you might expect, Pink Lotus Elements has sourced an organic, highly concentrated, potent whole leaf matcha straight from Japan. And it contains the entire leaf, and a study on this particular green tea showed it to have 137 times the amount of antioxidants than regular routine off-the-shelf green tea. So, oh, by the way, some people are worried about green tea and caffeine. They just can't tolerate caffeine. So just for your knowledge, 3 cups of green tea a day, which I like people to have, has the caffeine equivalent of 1 cup of coffee. And decaffeinated green tea is actually fine, but it does have 1/3 the antioxidants of caffeinated green tea. But drinking some tea is way better than none. And it's also powerful. If decaf is the only way you can consume drinks, that's fine. Do it. So at pinklotus.com/smoothie, you will find my smoothie recipe. And I'm going to show you something pretty awesome about it. But think about this. Cancer only needs one of the more than 50 trillion cells in our bodies to make a mistake while dividing. And then a window of opportunity opens. You need an immune system that is highly functional and not distracted by other illness that's keeping it not watching what these rogue mutated cells might be doing. And so you better hope that if you just poured a bunch of radical scavenging antioxidants into your mouth and into your system to block that window of opportunity. Because if the only thing defending that little mutated cell is a chicken wing and white rice, then that cancer cell is going to fly out that window much faster than the bird you sent after it. So one of the best things that you can consume on a daily basis would be something like my smoothie that, check this out. We've got our list of 16 anti-estrogenic foods that we went through. In this smoothie that you make it by yourself at home is soy. 1.5 cups of soy milk is the base. 2 big fistfuls of cruciferous veggies like kale and spinach. 2 cupfuls of berries, which provides a ton of dietary fiber. 1 or 2 tablespoons of ground flax seeds, a teaspoon of turmeric, a cupful of aloe tonic, a teaspoon of ancient matcha, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of amla is all blended up into this super delicious drink. You could add in, to hit 4 more of our top 18 anti-estrogenic foods, you could throw in some citrus, a little cacao for sweetness, an apple or half a red apple and some red grapes. I actually always have a bunch of frozen red grapes in the freezer for that purpose. And the only things missing out of 18 anti-estrogenic foods that are missing from this drink that you could just get down and throw in the way of that window between a cancerous cell change, which, by the way, it's estimated. It's hard. You can't put an actual number on this. I looked for hours trying to figure it out, but there do seem to be like 1 million DNA mutations a day that your body has to identify, fix, or throw away. So how awesome to just down this smoothie and put that into the system for the day, fighting off all those DNA mismatches and breaks. The only 5 things missing are tomatoes, mushrooms, garlic, seaweed, and whole grains, which sounds like a yummy lunch or dinner coming your way. And I think it'd be kind of gross to put those in the smoothie, but you could. So that's just a little tip on, because a lot of people get overwhelmed. Like, I really love that idea of all these amazing foods, but that's like, it would take me all day, every day to be like checking off my checklist. Like, all right, I got that part. I got the flax in my oatmeal. Oh, I got the turmeric. I put it on my rice at lunch. Oh, you know what I mean? Like, so I just drink this smoothie and I don't have to worry about it so much. And then I eat whole food plant-based all day anyway. So I'm sure I'm just getting more awesomeness.
How many smoothies are we talking? I mean, like, so that to me seems like at least 2 of those, I guess, 12-ounce glasses that are up on the screen right now. So this is going to be a pretty substantial smoothie, right?
Yeah, you can sip it kind of like over an hour or so in the morning. It's in the Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign free e-cookbook that you get when you sign up at letsbeatbreastcancer.org. And it's on the website, but it has, I don't want to misspeak, but it's not as caloric as you think. It's somewhere hovering around 380 calories. And it's like, it makes about 28 ounces.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Love that.
All right. So part of the Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign, it encourages you to take a challenge with us to eat a whole food plant-based diet, limiting meat, dairy, eggs, processed foods, saturated fat, simple sugars, and refined grains. We encourage you to exercise and maintain ideal body weight, and we discourage you from drinking alcohol. So let's talk a little bit about why. And for my drinkers out there, maybe you're looking for a little workaround, a little hope, maybe just on birthday and holidays and days out with friends. All right. So what's happening with alcohol? It's increasing estrogen levels. That's like the villain of today's discussion, is it not? So that's a bad thing. It forms acetaldehyde, which is the principal and most toxic metabolite of alcohol, which disrupts DNA synthesis and repair, and it impairs, therefore, immune function, immune cells being the entire thing that identifies and destroys cancer cells in your body. So we don't want that impaired. And it inactivates folic acid or folate from becoming its activated form in your body, which is called methylfolate. Methylfolate babysits the DNA as it divides. It kind of fixes it if it goes awry or throws it out if it's unfixable. And so you really need your methylfolate, the activated form of folic acid from vitamins, folate from your leafy greens, to be present and functional. So wait a minute, doc. Doesn't alcohol prevent heart attacks? And haven't you said somewhere along the way that we're 7 times more likely to die of a heart attack than you are of breast cancer? Yeah. So we've all seen the headlines about studies associating drinking with heart health. But Houston, I think we found a problem here. It's called the J curve. So there are hundreds of studies published from the 1990s and the early 2000s that show the classic J-shaped curve when it comes to drinking and death from heart disease, cancer, and all cause. The J shape means that relative to a non-drinker, let's just go through this graph verbally, especially for those who are just listening to audio right now. I want you to know that along the bottom of this graph are the number of alcoholic drinks someone is consuming per day, from 0 on to 6 or more. And then on the left-sided vertical, we've got all-cause mortality. So our null person drinks nothing and is the 1.0 cause mortality. If you go below 1.0, so 0 point something, that means you're exerting a protective effect. If you go above 1.0, that means you're exerting a cancerous effect or an all-cause mortality effect. So if you quick statistics lesson, 1.0 is our person who drinks nothing. So this is everything after that is relative to that person who drinks nothing. If it's 0.8, that's a 20% protective effect. If it's 1.2, that's a 20% incremental deleterious or cancer causing effect. Okay. Did I make that clear? Chuck, pretty good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So what's happening with the J curve is the tip of the J, the loopity tip, that's at 1 and the null person who doesn't drink at all. So what happens when you drink 1 drink a day or 2 drinks a day or 3 drinks a day? And I drew this curve, like hand drew it. So it's not quite right. Just listen to what I'm saying and don't stare at the curve too much with the numbers on the bottom, because I'll tell you right now. So the J shape means that relative to a non-drinker, those who drink moderately, meaning 1 drink a day for women and 2 drinks a day for men. Although, by the way, I scanned most of these, and the European studies can have you tripling those daily numbers. But anyway, what we see is that the moderate drinkers, however defined, actually have less all-cause mortality, meaning just dying from any reason whatsoever, than those who don't drink at all. But then on the heavy drinking side of our curve, the mortality bumps up much higher than the non-drinker. So this led to, as one might suspect, much jubilation amongst drinkers and amongst the alcohol industry. So it's really hard to follow the money when it comes to who funded studies, because there's loopholes in needing to report conflicts of interest. But regardless of why they did it, maybe all of those studies conveniently classified former drinkers as if they never touched the stuff. Aha. So if you include in the abstainers all those who used to drink heavily and quit because they're like super sick, and all those who quit because like they have cancer or heart disease and drinking makes them feel worse, now all of a sudden the abstainers group has rather poor health, right? So it actually makes the moderate drinkers, 1 or 2 glasses a day, look super fit. So that study came out in 2017 that looks at exactly that. And it reclassified all of those non-drinkers, and boop. I booped too soon. Hold on. I have another slide. I forgot about it. So this revamped meta-analysis included 87 studies that had all replicated the classic J-shaped curve. Okay, so they're all J-shaped curvers. And now this is representing nearly 4 million people and 370,000 deaths. They found that 65 of the 87 studies included former drinkers in the abstainer group. And then another 9 studies included current occasional drinkers in the abstainer group, for a total of 74 out of 87 studies, meaning 85% of the so-called abstainers were not, in fact, never drinkers. So when you correct the bias in the reference group, the J curve vanishes, and it's completely replaced by what you might expect, which is a linear curve, meaning the more you drink, the higher your risk. And the person with the least risk when it comes to alcohol is the person who doesn't drink any. But they did an analysis adding back the occasional drinker into the reference group. That's less than 1 drink a month, by the way. But if you do that, there's no change, but there's no protection either. Moderate drinking in moderation is okay, maybe? I know some of you are like, okay, Dr. Buzzkill, doesn't that mean, here's my super clever person. They're like, wait a minute, 15% of the studies then legit found a protective effect, right? Because only 85% of the studies were contaminated. Okay, maybe. But I'm going to put on my doctor hat, my buzzkill hat, and say that more studies associate bad over good, implicating alcohol for causing high blood pressure, obesity, stroke, cancers of the mouth, throat, esophagus, colon, liver, and breast, cirrhosis, depression, suicide, and accidents, to name a few negatives of drinking. But so if you don't drink, don't start. But I'm going to put on like a cooler girlfriend hat for a second and ask along with you, based on the science, is there any room for some sort of moderation here? All right, well, let's back up and talk about what's a drink. I'm going to focus on breasts because that's what I do. And I like to stay within my main jam. So the US defines one drink as 14 grams of alcohol. What's that? 12 ounces of beer equals 5 ounces of wine equals 1.5 ounces of hard liquor. The World Cancer Research Fund, along with the American Institute for Cancer Research, publishes its landmark consensus data in the science of cancer prevention, like every 10 years or so. So the latest breast cancer and alcohol risk data is what I'm quoting here. For those who drink, as it pertains to breast cancer, alcohol and breast cancer risk, those who drink a half a drink a day increase their breast cancer risk by 5%. A drink a day, 10%. 2 drinks a day, 30%, 3 drinks a day, 40% increase. So the increase in risk in all of these studies was almost exclusively in estrogen receptor positive cancers, by the way. And these elevations in risk spanned all types of alcohol, except maybe one. Aha. Okay. Now we're talking maybe there's a workaround of sorts. What about red wine? Red wine seems to have some fairly impressive redemptive qualities, and many studies show an actual decrease in all cancers relative to teetotalers exclusively for red wine. But J-curve problem, remember? So what do we know? This 2020 paper details how you can see that the flavonoid and non-flavonoid compounds in red wine and the phenolic compounds in their metabolites affect all of these cell functions: cancer cell differentiation, cell growth inhibition, metastases inhibition, apoptosis, cancer cell suicide induction, and modulation of estrogen signaling such that it's interfering with estrogen driving the breast cancer division rate. So naturally occurring aromatase inhibitors, now we're back to that enzyme in the fat that's converting steroids to estrogen. There are aromatase inhibitors that naturally exist in grapes and grape juice and grapeseed extract and in red wine. So again, I'm not saying to start drinking red wine for these properties. If you don't, just chomp on some red grapes, okay? You do not need to start drinking to get all of these benefits. You don't get any of it from white grapes or white wine. But can you believe that cancer cells actually use aromatase to create their own estrogen so they can fuel themselves? They actually have it in like a little suitcase where they're walking around. They've got their own aromatase packed. They don't even need yours or your own fat. The breast fat in your breast has the aromatase too. Like it's those sinister little beasts. I mean,
that is really advanced. Like they are trying to be self-sustaining little sons of guns.
Indeed they are. And that's why every time you lift fork to mouth, every time you decide what to do and not do right now, what to think and not think, even what to say and not say as it pertains to the way the mind-body connection works, it all matters to create this milieu, this environment inside of your body that is constantly screaming out anti-cancer, anti-plaque, anti-obesity. Because these cells, I don't know, they're on a mission to survive. They're programmed to survive at all means necessary. So anyway, the aromatase inhibiting properties in our red wine, can inactivate that enzyme, and it takes away the cell's abilities to autofuel. So foiled. This 2020 paper explains how your new favorite alcoholic choice just might save your life. So the flavonoids and polyphenols that we just mentioned, that are in red wine, and along with the EGCG in green tea, and our genistein and daidzein in soy, the resveratrol in the red wine, in the quercetin, that's in onions, kale, cherry tomatoes, broccoli, blueberries, apples. Those are all excellent quercetin, or quercetin. I think it's quercetin. I'm going to go with that pronunciation. I've never actually looked it up, how to say quercetin. Do you know? I'm going to go with quercetin.
Quercetin. I'm going to look it up. You keep talking.
Right, but yeah. Anyway, remember, it's the skin where the abundance of phytochemicals live. So whenever possible, never peel. And like with onions, peel minimally so that the outermost layer that is edible is what you're eating. And like with everything, go with the color. So anyway, red onions are better than yellow onions, are better than white, but please just eat the rainbow. I don't get caught up in the color business because it's already awesome. It's all plant food. So we know that resveratrol from the skin of red grapes, again, you can just eat the grapes, inhibits all three requirements for cancer to form: initiation, promotion, and progression. So that's what's happening here. And the ultimate end in our graph is that there's a decrease from consuming all of these chemicals in their food form. There's a decrease in breast cancer proliferation and migration. Foiled again. Here's secret weapon number 2. If you choose to drink, consume occasionally, choose red wine, and then let's talk about methylfolate. And where do you get it? You get it inside your own body. There's an enzyme that sounds like a bad word called MTHFR that stands for methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase. And it's taking, as I said to you before, the folate via food or the folic acid via vitamins and churning it into its activated form, L5-methylfolate, which, as I mentioned already, babysits the DNA as it divides. So what happens is alcohol decreases the folate absorption from your intestines, and it increases excretion in the kidneys, and it interferes with the necessary conversion of methylfolate, folate into its methylfolate helpful form. So so just by drinking, you're decreasing the front loading that needs to get converted, and you're stopping the ability to convert into what you're really needing here, which is methylfolate that fixes DNA mutations. So, oh yeah, I wanted you to know, 30 to 50% of people just genetically, like de novo born this way, have a suboptimal MTHFR enzyme. So those people, turns out, have a slightly increased risk of breast cancer, but it's all mitigated just by consuming leafy greens for them. Some people, this thing doesn't work. And that's been shown in the literature. For them, they have like a 67% increase in breast cancer. Just explaining why this conversion thing really matters. You need your methylfolate. And so if you're one of these slow enzyme workers, 30 to 50% of people are, and then you drink, boom, you knock that thing out for the day. It'll be back again tomorrow, but today, not so much. The Nurses' Health Study was a long-term study. It looked like 89,000 women. And then they pulled out just the drinkers from this study. And among those who all drank one or more alcoholic drinks a day, supplementing with 600 micrograms a day of folate led to 89% less breast cancer versus those who had less folate. So it does seem to be that among the things that alcohol does in terms of increasing estrogen, impairing the immune system, increasing acetaldehyde, that this cascade between folate and methylfolate is incredibly important because it can be mitigated by more folate. So you could just consume. When you choose to drink, maybe you want to consume a vitamin form of methylfolate. Cosmo Companion is one that we formulated because it also has botanicals that support and protect your liver cells, and it supports glucose metabolism. And it also has methylfolate in its active form, B6 and B12. Those three things combine inside your body to form glutathione, which is the most powerful antioxidant that exists. So that's your workaround. If you're going to have an occasional drink, choose red wine and maybe take a methylfolate supplement. To learn all sorts of extra dietary tricks and much, much more, I'd love to see you guys at my summit. It's at the gorgeous oceanfront resort Terranea in Southern California, October 16, 17 this year, but we are going to hold it every year and in multiple cities. So check my website out for where it may be coming next. And if you can't make it in person, please join the virtual summit. For those who are watching this in October 2021 until November 15th, there are coupon codes available. LBBC, standing for Let's Beat Breast Cancer, LBBC 10 for 10% off the live summit, and LBBC 20 for 20% off the virtual, with additional proceeds going as a donation to our favorite organization, PCRM. If you want to read about all the things I'm talking about, I've got some. Well, I only have one book. It's just in paperback and hardback. And please join my pinklotus.com/powerup. The Power Up community is completely free. Many tens of thousands of women are already on there wanting to connect with you. It's bursting with ways to have panel discussions with others. You can educate yourself, fundraise, and learn all sorts of awesome recipes and much more. And do visit the Pink Lotus Element store, where we've put together an online women's health and breast cancer store that contains all of these very uniquely formatted, intelligently designed supplements and other items that address the needs of women before, during, and after a breast cancer diagnosis. And finally, join the Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign. Take our challenge to eat whole foods, exercise more, drink less or not at all, and maintain a healthy body weight. LBBC. It's my favorite campaign of the year.
You are chock full of information. I love when what strikes me is, one, your passion in talking about this, but two, your ability to really take what can be very complicated science and boil it down so that all of us who haven't spent years in medical school, all of us can still understand and digest this information. So that is a rare talent, and my hat is off to you.
Thank you. And you have nice hair with your hat off. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. Housekeeping notes here. Follow up. I'm wondering, one of the anti-estrogenic foods you were talking about closer to the top of the presentation were citrus foods. And is any one more beneficial than another?
The limonene is one of the most powerful compounds that's coming out of the citrus fruit family. And even though it says limonene, you would think that it's most common in a lime or a lemon, but it's in oranges.
Wow.
Yes. So go for the orange.
And I think this will set us up great for the next show, which we will be talking about obesity and exercise and the correlation there with breast cancer. But I think when people see studies like you were talking about, where you drink green tea, it lowers your risk of cancer substantially. I think people think then, well, if I drink 5 cups of green tea a day, that's going to completely erase any damage that I do by going through the drive-through every day. And is it possible to outdrink that damage with green tea?
Oh, it's absolutely possible, because while each of these foods is powerful in its own way and can have multiple avenues through which it decreases cancer's ability to form and grow, it's not a single food can be ingested as a panacea. And cancer, as we discussed today, is super sinister. It has all sorts of alternate pathways to take. If you decide to block this route, it's like, all right, whoop, I'll just go this way then. And that green tea, for example, had no idea that it was going to take this avenue. So it's not knocking out all of the very creative ways cancer has to literally, it can upregulate its gene function if you downregulate something else. It's just going to be like, all right, you're taking my estrogen away. Boom, I'm going to put up some growth factor receptors over here. So you have to be, I don't want to create a fear-based initiative, but you just want to be on your toes. Like, the burger's never going to help you. Never.
Keep that in mind, people. The burger will never help you. That should be on a t-shirt. I feel like I've learned so much here today, so I can't wait to dive in to do a little bit more next time. And Dr. Funk, as always, thank you so very much for your time. You're so generous and wise, and just there's so many people who are getting so much out of this. So my hat is off to you.
Thank you so much.
If your health IQ is a couple of points higher than it was a few minutes ago, go ahead and like this video or subscribe to the YouTube channel. And to take it even higher, head over to Apple Podcast or wherever you get your favorite shows. Look for The Exam Room by the Physicians Committee. Hit the subscribe button there as well and help to make your world a healthier place.